It's about time to listen to Boom Shaka. It's about time to listen to Dissection. Welcome to another episode of the Dissection. Guess what I just got in the mail? Something, a little something. Let me show you this and let's share the moment together. There it is. Presented to Mighty Jamie TV for passing 100,000 subscribers from YouTube. The tubes of you. So this is a big moment, and thank you everybody who was part of the journey, the day ones, the people who came when the Kwanazi files were burning and were on flame. Yo, look at that. Look at that. It's like literally you can see your reflection in it. Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate the support. If you haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? This channel is popping. It's popping so much. You get letters from lawyers and phone calls and all kinds of things. If you want to get more on that, go to the Twitter page and see some of that drama there. I'm not going to bring it here for now. So thank you so much. Let's get to talking about what was happening today. So today we had two processes, right? We had the ad hoc committee in Parliament. Senzo Mchunu was answering questions from members of Parliament. That's still ongoing at the time of recording. And then we also had Witness A continuing with his testimony. He actually went on for another full day. I thought he was going to finish maybe before lunch and maybe would start to hear from Witness B, but he kept on going. And it's Witness A's testimony about that hotel that got me in trouble. But we'll talk about that another day, like I said. So let's start with Minister Senzo Mchunu and the ad hoc committee and some of my thoughts and reflections on how he has been doing. So firstly, I was interested to see how the members of parliament from the ANC specifically would treat Senzo Mchunu in their cross-examinations or in their, questions and answer sessions. And they gave him a little bit of a tough time. It gave me the impression that the ANC is not really trying to overly protect him. There obviously is a narrative that he is pushing, and he may very well succeed in that narrative, to say that Brown Mkhotsi never called him, Brown Mkhotsi never sent him a message, he doesn't know Vusi Matlala, he was not involved. Whatever happened at the level of Vusi and Brown and all of these crime experts, but he himself was not involved. I don't know if everyone will believe that and if that will hold up even at the commission, where they may ask him some more decided questions, and we don't also know what else will be revealed as time goes. But that's his strategy. I was interested to see how the ANC would treat his approach to the whole thing and treat him. So going up first was Thokozile Sokanyile, and she came up first. So I think sometimes people are being tough on her. I don't think everyone is going to be eloquent and proficient and demonstrate a loquacious proclivity for use of the Queen's tongue. I don't think everyone is going to meet that particular criteria. But sometimes if you give someone a little bit of room, you'll find what they're actually trying to ask. So one of the big questions I got from her that I think the minister was a bit dismissive of, but that I think mattered, was the question of why did he wait for the National Commissioner to go on leave when he was just with the National Commissioner a few days prior at a funeral? Why didn't he have a conversation with the National Commissioner at that time? And the answer was not satisfactory, right? And it went on like that. Ngola as well asked some questions. I thought that they were hard questions. He pointed out where there were some contradictions or some answers from the minister which he was not satisfied with. So that got the ball rolling. ANC is not giving him an easy time. And as you can anticipate, the Democratic Alliance, not the Democratic Alliance, MK quazzed him as much as they could. They were quazzing at that quazz velocity that that they quazz at. Some of their questions were solid. DA also asked him some tough questions, which was a change, I think, from the tempo of questions last time with Shadrack Sibi. I thought that the DA today, Glenys Breitenbach, actually was asking tougher questions today. One of the big issues that the minister has to deal with, and one of the big issues that he was pushed on frequently, was this definition of the word immediately. He has this argument that immediately does not mean now. It means in light of the context. In another meeting, we must consider the immediately not to mean now, but later, but now, but later. The things we're seeing. The minister has a challenge in this regard because On the other side of the equation, he's insisting on a dictionary definition of what associate means. And that's when it comes to Brown Mkhotsi. He's very strict. The dictionary says this as an associate. The dictionary says this is a comrade. He insists he doesn't know him like that. I don't know him like that. I know him, but I don't know him like that. You know, he sounds like a cheating husband who's confessing or saying that he doesn't know Mbali from the gym like that. I don't know Mbali like that. But why is she messaging you at 11 p.m., sir? Saying she's still thinking about your workout. This Mbali you don't know like that. No, I don't know her like that. She's not my close associate. I can pay me now. Anyway, so that's one of the things. Because on the one hand, you can't insist on the dictionary when it comes to associate, but then say, I've got my own definition when it comes to immediate. Immediate has to mean now. It has to mean manje. It can't mean manje, go to a later, but later meaning when I tell you and if we follow and if we... Come on. That's something that I don't think is persuading anybody. And I think he's doubling down over and over again on it is not necessarily pushing any persuasive... it's not shifting the overton window, so to speak. There was a lot of discussion as well about the threat from General Mkhwanazi, which he said was on voice note, right? He proffered that information. He said, look, there's this threat. I can prove it. Here's the voice note. The translator listened to the voice note, said, I can't hear the part. We had multiple interactions and engagements about that threat, which was supposed to come from General Mkhwanazi. It didn't materialize. There was no proof of it. And because the minister spoke so extensively about it, it's something that just kept coming up over and over again. And I think does reduce the credibility of his testimony somewhat, because you came in with this whole argument that there's this threat. And now he's saying, well, Nkabinde got the threat, etc., etc. So that's something that I think is still a challenge for him. The minister was still taking a long time to answer questions, still lecturing as much as possible. In morning session, there was a little bit of that. The evidence leader was trying to push him along, Advocate Arense. He was trying to push him along. Let's go. And he's quite good at running down the questions. So they have to really make sure they ask him short, direct questions. 3 questions too many, but 3 questions sometimes may be necessary because this chap is going to talk for a bit. But he rambles, and then towards the end he answers the question. Rambles, and then towards the end he answers the question. It's quite frustrating if you think about it, because a lot of time is being lost in the meanders of his methodology. But I think it's a strategy, and I think it's part of the game that he's playing in terms of, if I finish the clock, there's less that you can ask me. So there was a lot of discussion about the affidavit that the minister instructed his lawyers to get from Vusi the Kadmatala Wetamanyala while he is in prison. Vusi was doing affidavits in prison, and there were concerns about the optics of that. This man already has been found with cell phones in prison, and Julius Malema challenged him on the fact that the answer seemed to be changing as the day went on. This answer about the affidavit. First, there was this whole question of, he expressed a wish to get an affidavit from Matala, and then his lawyers went and got him and they granted his wish. And then he was told, no, but it's an instruction. And it's like, well, if you call it an instruction, then he went on to call it a wish again. Senzo Mchunu, he's a very good public speaker, but sometimes when you're too good at public speaking, people can then see your polishing tactics. And, his choice of words, the words he chooses to prefer, etc. Just listen to this exchange and see what you think.
Nobody out there has any confirmation of anything between me and Matlala. Absolutely nothing. And I can go anywhere and say people must remain behind and investigate anything linked, but they still do it on national television without a piece of evidence. Now, I don't want to spare any moment making sure or making efforts that I have no link with Matlala. That's why I even got my diary to the lawyers to say, here is my diary, in case you believe that you are merely defending me on something that I otherwise know, and then you are going to come with legal strategies. Now, you must know, this is my diary. I was not in Cape Town. I was elsewhere. And I never requested anyone to coordinate anything.
We have a limited time. Chair, and I want you and honorable members to note this. We're being given the third answer on the same question. The first answer was, my lawyers went without an instruction. Then upon being made aware that they've committed something unethical, then the minister says, no, I actually gave them an instruction. Then I point this two contradictory statements to the minister. The minister gives a third answer on the same question. No, actually, my lawyers didn't go. I didn't give them instruction. It's Matala who writes to my lawyers uninvited, dear Mr. So-and-so, I represent, which means, which answer stands here? Because it's either the lawyers went without the minister's permission, or the minister gave them the instruction, or Matala wrote the letter uninvited by anyone. So, Minister, please clarify this three, because as things are, it's becoming worse now. Because you gave me three answers. The lawyers went without me. Then I said, no, they can't do that. It's unethical. Oh, I gave them instruction. It was my wish. Okay, you now give them instruction. You still want to have access for people who are behind big fences and walls at maximum prison. No. It's not that. Actually, Matala and the wife, now the wife comes now for the first time since we canvassed this question. Matala and the wife's lawyer wrote and said they represent them, and we must get their affidavit because we are going to Madlanga's commission. Which one do we take home here? Because it's not me. You know, Minister, the worry is you shouldn't think you are speaking to me. This matters as you stand there addressing us. You are clarifying the country which is troubled by these things, that ministers have got access to dangerous criminals to an extent that they can even have access to them even when they are behind bars. Matala was found with a phone in a maximum prison. Matala produces a minister's affidavit from a maximum prison. According to minister's evidence that it's not me, he wrote to me. Because of that, then we use the affidavit. What is the answer, Chair?
The answer is, I did say in the discussion, in the course of discussion over time with lawyers, I did express a need or a wish that I distance myself or be away.
So what do you think? Do you think that the answer is changing? Do you think that there's some meanders happening? Or do you think that the minister is modifying his answer and changing the answer as the day goes? You know, in an exam, when people are looking to the side and they see that, no, the answer is not going the direction it needs to, then they think, before we go on, have you subscribed? Have you subscribed? Check. There's so many people who've said that they thought they were subscribed and they haven't subscribed. We're trying to bring down horse curry behavior to zero. And this channel is one of the channels that's committed to doing that. And now that, you know, this thing is getting hot, now people are like, you know, there's all kinds of stuff happening. At least let me know that you subscribed, so that if I'm taking risks out here in front of this camera and this microphone, I know that people subscribe. They enjoy the content. Join the dissection community. It's free 99. It's mahala till December of 2029. 3039, 4049, it's free mahala, no cost to you whatsoever. Watch the ads, participate in the comment section, share this wherever. You know, you never know which video may get taken down or which content may get deleted or whatever the case may be. And these are things that are having to happen, so make sure you subscribe. The other issue which he was pushed on was this issue of the interministerial committee. And he argues that, you know, there was no interministerial committee. Lots of pushback because other interministerial committees have gone on from administration to administration. There were no handover notes that were given to him. There was no report compiled to discuss or reflect on the work of that particular interministerial committee, and that is typically what happens. So he's going uphill with that argument, and members of parliament are familiar with the different task teams and the different, interministerial committees that are running and have run across administration. When he argues that, you know, he legitimately disbanded that particular one, he gets a lot of pushback because people are like, well, you know, that's not necessarily it. And another version of the argument that he puts across is that, listen, I was justified to do what I did because the police minister was chair of that IMC. If the IMC doesn't reconstitute for whatever reason, then I have necessarily the prerogative to disband that particular interministerial committee or to make decisions about the things that it put into existence. And I think there he's really getting close to saying that he has the powers of the president. I think the president can do that. I'm not sure he can necessarily do that. And I don't think that he is advancing the argument of lawfulness or constitutionality. But, this will go to the National Assembly. They'll make a determination and it may even end up in courts, that particular legal question. But there are other questions that are, adjacent to that, which are not legal questions necessarily, political questions, ethical questions. And I think with those, there are more challenges to the answers that he's giving. He also didn't consult the chief financial officer about the budgets. He didn't consult with the task team or the national commissioner. He wasn't even done with his orientation period. And this is what they keep pushing him on to say, there's so many task teams, so many divisions, so many units. Why this particular one? Why did you go for this one in particular? And I'm going to just tell you the most used phrase of the day from the minister. This is a fact was number 2. And number 1, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. He has his version of how it works, and we'll see whether or not they'll accept that version going down. So Witness A, let's talk about Witness A and the Madlanga Commission. That testimony is important, got me into a little bit of trouble. Witness A said today that, they actually started working with members of the political killings task team. And at that point, the status of the SWAT case was at an advanced stage. And Katiso Molefe would have been the 4th suspect that they were going to arrest. And they were also looking at arresting Katiso Molefe's nephew as well. So then there was a discussion about the day of the arrest, which was the 6th of December. Witness A was in charge of the operation, which was meant to get Katiso KT Molefe, and that was a successful operation. Witness B was part of an operation to arrest Lucky Molefe, who's the nephew, not son. I think in the other one I said son, it's a nephew. He was not found to be on location when that arrest was supposed to be done. So Witness B was not able to successfully apprehend him. That young man has absconded. We don't know where he is currently, right? So there was then a discussion around what was inside Katiso Molefe's home, right? He consented to them searching the house. There were numerous vehicles there, 7 cars on the premises. You can't hosh curry without a karakara. You know what I'm saying? You need a whip. And in fact, you may need 7 whips, 7 whips. Hey, the things we are seeing. So Katiso Molefe said all of the vehicles were his, right? Witness A says that they took the keys that would be part of their investigations. And they also found, whilst they were searching, some Transnet tender documents at his house. And remember, his nephew was working for Transnet at the time. He was responsible for buying products for Transnet. So you can see how the hoshkari behavior then happened, because you've got the son, or the nephew rather, in there buying products from SKK. They're getting them from Q-Tech. They're overcharging. And this basically closes the loop. So one man on the inside, other guy on the outside providing the products, and then working as a middleman. So that's basically what was happening. Then there was this discussion about the Hawks and the role of the Hawks on that particular day. And we've heard some reporting about this, and we've heard it being discussed by Mkhwanazi and others. And it's very interesting, because while they were doing the operation at, that mansion, they then got information that the Hawks actually wanted to enter the house, find out what was happening. There was a helicopter that was flying outside, and they actually told the Hawks that this was a legitimate investigation. They ended up calling for backup, and what he said was odd is that the Hawks were looking for, details of the docket, and he says that's not a thing that we usually do. It was a peculiar thing for them to do that. And then he actually mentioned that it was Captain Kruger who instructed the Hawks to find out what was happening at Molefe's house. And as you know, the head of the Hawks at that time was General Godfrey Libya. So he may also have to come and explain his side of the story and what he thinks, or what he would then have to. And then remember, there was the super consultant, Malcolm X Chakalaka version, who also was demanding to enter the house during the operation. So just imagine this. You're Witness A, you're here to arrest this man. You've done all of the due diligence. You believe that there's a strong case against him. And as you're arresting him in this mansion with 7 vehicles, I'm sure one of them was a Viano. Vianos are popping up left, right, and center. So Viano, now if you drive a Viano, we are going to look at you some type of way. Hoshkari driving. Hoshkari karakara. We're going to... Anyway, so just imagine you're witness A. You're there, we're trying to arrest this chap. Now there's a helicopter. Now there are people down here. Now there's hawks. Now there's a standoff. All of this, I think, was dramatic. And he says that actually he got told by an individual after the arrest of Katiso Molefe that, you've arrested somebody who is the person of the generals, or somebody who is in the protection or in the circle of the generals. And that's something that he said that, he was then told. And that he was told by the same individual that Molefe was well connected within the police ranks. And he says the individual is known but cannot be named. He says that in addition to all of that other stuff, that Colonel Mukwena told him that General Shadrack Sibiya wanted to know what Katiso Molefe was arrested for. And Witness A says that, Sibiya was not happy with the Molefe arrest at a local police station. And he was talking about how his family was concerned. In these instances, you just think, some families, people think they're more important than other people's families, right? Because now you're being asked about this guy's family, but what about the family of Aman Swat? What about the family of Babita Deokaran? What about the family of Mpo Marofale? There's so many people who've lost their lives in all of these shenanigans. And for some people to be prioritized more than others, it just leaves an icky feeling, to be like, oh, so this is the approach, and not necessarily that let's get to the bottom of this issue, let's get justice, etc., etc. So yeah, that's some of the stuff that he discussed. He also spoke about how he got invited to a farm, I think is Shadrack Sibiya's farm, and how a variety of people were showing interest in the case. One of the people that he mentioned by name was the acting Sedibeng District Commissioner, Brigadier Nkwashu, as one of the police officers who he thought was interfering with Aman Swat's case. And I think that person will also have to now appear and explain themselves. And he was saying that one of these individuals actually snuck into the prison, visited Katiso Molefe, and he wasn't at the second party, him, Witness A, but that this individual was at that party. Witness A says he doesn't know if General Shibiri is compromised and working with the syndicates, as he was indebted to Sibiya, who was influential in his promotion. So he said he didn't know what was the process or whatever. But he also reiterated that Shibiri constantly told Witness A and the team to be careful and safe when investigating the SWAT case. He alleges that Major General Richard Shibiri told him that Molefe was part of a group of 5 individuals in the Northwest with mining interests in that province. I don't know if that is now the Big 5 cartel or a different group of individuals. So curiously, Julius Malema also got a shout out, a mention in passing. So what he was told is that Molefe was connected to Jotan Msibi Umswazi, the taxi boss who I told you about, who was quite popular and also infamous, and also was alleged to have committed violent strikes or whatever you want to call them within the industry. So Zen Ngumalo is an entrepreneur, right? And according to Witness A, he's allegedly a close associate of Julius Malema, who is in turn a close associate of General Sibiya. So that's all he said about that. And I don't know what the implication and the connotations are that you take from it, but he was basically trying to say that those are the implications. And I know some people will then say that is the reason why perhaps Julius Malema did not ask General Sibiya any questions in the cross-examination. I don't know. We don't know, right? He will have to explain that to the public and the media when they get an opportunity to ask him that. But it was a curious thing that he got mentioned in that respect. So, according to Witness A, investigations discovered that Molefe had been to the United Kingdom with a fake passport. The passport had different names and different birth dates. Molefe's lawyers did not disclose during the bail application, the first one, that he had a previous conviction in the UK, and that when he was arrested there, in possession of dacha and a firearm. The firearm charge changes things a little bit because that even escalates your bail conditions in a, bail application, because the firearm conviction, a prior one, is a serious one, which leads to the question again, how did Molefe get bail? Witness A says that they were told that Molefe would get bail and that there was money to make this happen. And he says it was large amounts of money, I think in the millions, 2.5 million if I'm not mistaken. And Witness A says the judge was not willing to listen to the submissions of the prosecutor, but that of the defense during that particular bail application. Right? So he says that, regardless of Molefe being, somebody who had these prior convictions, he was still facing serious charges for murder. And also, it wasn't just murder in and of itself. It was a conspiracy to commit premeditated murder in furtherance of other crimes, right? So, such as the tender fraud that he's been alleged to have committed. All of this makes it in the Schedule 6 category. If you watch my previous video, you'll understand what implications and connotations that has for bail. So, he spoke about that. He spoke about that and the 2.5 million, etc. Now, he reflected a little bit on General Mkhwanazi towards the end. He said, ordinary police don't have the courage to speak out against corruption and they fear for their lives. He says he's grateful to General Mkhwanazi for that 6th of July press briefing, Fiasco Sunday, Miasma Sunday, Conundrum Sunday. He's happy for that because he says it exposed the rot. He told the commission his life has changed for doing his job. He acknowledges the stakes are high. He could have easily given up. But, families have lost their loved ones to murderers, and that's what keeps them going. He got very emotional, when he was testifying at the end, and he gave this warning. And I think it's a warning that we have to pay attention to because I think, what's been happening in Madagascar, what's been happening in Morocco, what's been happening in Nepal, in Ghana, the youth have been protesting, the youth have been articulating their frustration. And at some point, it does boil over, right? And what he said is, if change doesn't happen soon, we're doomed as a country. And I think that's a very powerful warning from somebody who has been looking at organized crime in Soweto, organized crime in Gauteng, would have seen all of the shenanigans in Pretoria, all of the shenanigans in the nightclubs, etc. Somebody who has a real grasp of this stuff is saying, if change doesn't happen now or happen soon, South Africa is doomed. I don't think that's something that should be taken lightly. Somebody who's already hiding because he's afraid of dying and being killed just for doing his job. Those are powerful moments. And he shared why he was emotional. They've lost members. Someone that he mentioned is that they lost somebody who was working in the organized crime unit, brutally killed in Soweto in one of these serious cases. They said he was gunned down for conducting an investigation. No one has been apprehended to this day. Witness A says that this Amand Swart case reminded him of his late colleague. So he was very emotional towards the end, and he was still maintaining, though, brave, emotional but brave, that he will do this again in his next life. He said he won't be deterred from investigating dangerous criminals in this country. And yeah, that's basically where it ended. And it was a powerful testimony. I think he discharged himself well, showed all of his evidence, showed the paper trail, showed, the cell phone tower records, all of the stuff, videos, and pictures of where the cars were located. And they had the cartridges from the guns. I think they have a strong case. I think it's a watertight case. I'm still surprised up to now how Katiso Molefe got bail. But I think it was important for the public to know this information. And I saw yesterday that video was well watched. And I think it's worthwhile that it was well watched because it's an important video and important testimony. Now, there's split screens, but we're going to keep trying to summarize everything for you. So stay tuned to the dissection. Catch you in the next one.